You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
FM 88.1 WHPR, Highland Park.
WVIE 107.3 FM Charlotte, Amalia, Virgin Islands.
The views and opinions expressed on the following show are not necessarily the views and opinions of WHPS, its affiliates, management, or sponsors.
It's that time, y'all. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Yeah, it's straight talk with Valerie. Come on. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Yeah, it's straight talk with Valerie. Come on. It's straight talk with Valerie. It's straight talk with Valerie. Come on. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. It's straight talk with Valerie. Come on. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. It's straight talk with Valerie. Come on. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. It's straight talk with Valerie. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. It's straight talk with Valerie. Come on. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. It's straight talk with Valerie. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. It's straight talk with Valerie. Come on.
What's happening, Detroit? You have tuned in to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie, where I keep it black, strong, and unfiltered. You are listening to 88.1 FM. If you are in the Detroit Highland Park area, RadioWeCanSee.com. If you're on the internet, 107.3 WVIE in the Virgin Islands. And tonight I want to talk about from pain to power. And I have a young lady in the studio with me that I've known for a very long time. And she is a survivor. And she has turned her pain to power. I would like to introduce to you Miss Ashley Lewis. Say hello to everyone, Ashley.
Hi, everybody, and thank you all for tuning in. And I pray that whatever I say today, that it touches someone and motivates them to go from being a victim to being a victor.
Yes, and that's exactly what you did. And you know, domestic violence has so many faces. And most oftentimes people don't even think about men being in abusive relationships also. However, it has various forms: finances, physical, emotional, all different forms. Can you share a little bit about what form of domestic violence you encountered?
So what I will say is that I often think that had it been more physical, I think it would have been easier for me to leave, because there would have been more physical evidence of him harming me. He was only physically abusive towards me, and not to say that diminish it, 4 times during the course of our 8-year marriage. But during that marriage also, I would say that he dehumanized me so much that I will tell you that a man probably just being nice to me would just feel good to me. And also, he was very strategic in keeping me cash poor, but also taking my finances and turning them into what would be considered mutual gains, except he was the one who was gaining mostly from everything. And I will tell you that, to me, financial, emotional abuse is way harder to get over, because it takes more of a deep dive within yourself to be able to decipher it, to see it, and to recognize it.
Wow. Well, I will tell you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, being brave enough to walk away from something that unhealthy is just, I'm in awe of it. Because, see, you have 3 boys. And I'm sure a lot of times you were thinking about your sons. Like, let me try to work this out because I have 3 sons, right? But did it become a time where you said, no, let me get the heck out of here because I have 3 sons? What was that defining moment for you to say, you know what? I've had enough.
It's interesting to me because I would say that what made me leave wasn't necessarily the worst thing that happened. I did a lot within the union, which was a great distraction. It kept me away from home. I didn't have to go home and fight and argue. So I was really active in the union. I had a lot of success there. I got elected to like 8 different positions in 6 years, or maybe, 6 different positions in 8 years. I'm sorry. And that was a great distraction. And I would take my boys with me. So we were all together and it was a way to protect them. But I struggled a great deal because I was an advocate in the workplace, but I couldn't fight for myself at home. I would go home and literally, during both pregnancies, I slept in my car a lot just to feel safe. In this big old house, with a 12-foot chandelier, looks great from the outside. But that was my reality. So I ended up being laid off. And so I lost all this success quickly. And so all of a sudden, I didn't have a distraction to keep me from focusing on that. And I remember going to therapy because I thought, well, maybe it's because, you've lost all this success. And we started off talking, and I'll tell you, it took a while for me to open up. It's take a while for me to get to this point, to be able to talk about these things. My family had no idea. I shielded them from him. I made him look amazing, even though I was going home and literally struggling. But what ended up happening was I told my therapist, I said, my husband put a pillow over my head and I couldn't breathe. And she says to me, I knew it. And she walked me down literally everything about my husband. It was like she knew him, but she did not know him. And it was literally the exact symptoms and issues that you see in abusive relationships. And she told me, she said, there's nothing wrong with you, but you're going to go home and you're going to try, because that's what you do. You're going to keep trying. And honestly, I went home and I kept praying and I kept praying and I said, God, just show me. And I come in one day and honestly, he cursed me out because I said, oh, you working out? And he started saying like, what the F, I'm working out. And I hate to say it like that, guys, but that's the truth. And this is what he says to me as I'm just walking in the door. And then I still stayed. But what broke the camel's back, honestly, was, and this is probably embarrassing for most people to share, but at the end of the day, it's the truth. I'm up at Black Lake teaching, helping to run a conference. I wasn't like the high person, but I was an instructor and helping to orchestrate it. Mm-hmm. I got all the kids. I begged to get them up there with me. And he's telling me he's going to work. So he gets up that morning in his scrubs. He gives me an embrace and he pulls off in his Z06. And I get a message from Verizon Wireless about noon saying that a travel pass has been activated on your phone. And so I ended up finding out this man was in the Dominican Republic. And I had no idea that he was going there. No idea. And in that moment, I realized I got it. I said, God, I got it. I got it. You ain't got to do nothing else. I don't need to see anything else. I got it. But I will tell you that I would say the first time he ever put hands on me was probably the time that I should have left. But ironically enough, him going to the Dominican Republic, that shattered me in a different way because I felt disrespected even more so. Mm-hmm. And so when he did that, it was funny. He sent me probably 300 texts. He even said it himself. And the only text I sent him, I said, you better come back with a new wife. And I never went back. And I'll tell you, for those that are out there, I was on a Women of Prayer. I literally went from Black Lake to Flint because I got notified that week I was going to Flint. And I will tell you, I thank God for the people in the union, the women in the union. I thank God for just God's people because I can't tell you how many blessings. They just grabbed me and they helped me. I had 3 boys, and I didn't let them go to him for about 30 days because I was afraid, because he knows, like, that's my heartbeats, that's my soul. Love those kids. And so I didn't want to give it to him because I was afraid he would use them. And they helped me. I mean, I can't. There was a lady named Z. There was a Leonia. They were women's committee members, but they just, I mean, they were doing everything they could. One worked second shift. They would transfer the kids in the car until I could get there. And I will say, when God leads you out, he orders every step. And I'm going to tell you, I've been financially blessed. I've been really good, but it took a great deal of faith to leave. That's what I would say.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I can feel that healing power coming from you when you're speaking, you know, and I appreciate you going back. But we're not going to dwell there. We're going to move on and talk about, you know, that inner critic, because you shared a little bit of it about how you were thinking it was you and I'm going to try harder and things of that nature. How did you silence that voice to that and create that voice of power, or stand firm on that voice of power? Because even though the straw that broke the camel's back occurred and you moved on, but there were still some other steps to go from that pain to power. So how did you start to recognize, I'm crawling, but I got to stand up and I got to walk? You know, did you leave the home with the 12-foot chandelier and you just walked away and you started all over? Walk us through that. So I left, and now what am I doing?
So when I left, I got home when I knew he wouldn't be home. And I had the police escort me in. I had my father and my brother there. And it was funny because I just thought, you know, this house full of things, I'm going to take so much. And I walked in and I looked around and I didn't want anything. I felt like everything was going to be a reminder of a life that just was literally depleting my soul. And so and the police officers, I was so grateful for. You talk about God. They told me, they said, I'm glad you're leaving now. They said, why do you have cameras in your bedroom? That's a good point. Why do I have cameras in my bedroom, right? And they told me that there was a woman that they had who, her husband had put a gun to her head, and she still wouldn't leave. And she said, I'm just proud of you for leaving now, before it gets to that point. And what I will say is that I'm not sure that there is a whole lot that goes into it. There is an inner critic in me, but I will say that my desire to do better, to break generational curses for my children, that I would say push me harder. Because what I would say is that my ex-husband, his parents were in an abusive relationship, but it was very, very physically abusive. So in his eyes, he could not correlate that he was treating me improperly because he wasn't physically beating me every day. And so when we talk about healing, you also have to recognize that even in this situation, while I could sit here and bash him and talk like the worst person in the world, he was a victim himself. To sit there and to witness that and to see that and to survive that. And everybody copes with it differently, but I can't necessarily blame him for that. I had to start digging in myself and asking myself, well, what is it within me that still wants to crave a love from somebody who was half full? Like, what is that, right? And really what I will tell you is that I looked at my sons and I said, I don't want a young lady like me who just, all she wants to do is love you. All she wants to do is be a good companion. And you do the wrong thing because that's what you've learned. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of it as well. And I will also say, I give a lot of praise to my grandmother, because while my dad was saying, you need to go back, because men think about money, right? And I love my father to death. That was my guy. But men think about stability. They think about money. But my grandmother,
she was on point, huh?
She was. I remember telling her, I said, nobody's going to want me. I'm a single mom with 3 boys. Nobody's going to want me. And she said, baby, have you looked in the mirror lately? Have you looked at yourself? I need you to really look at yourself. Mm-hmm. And it was those conversations that really built me up, because I would come there and I would literally cry because it was hard. You're leaving a marriage. It's a grieving process in that. And of course the men, you know, they try to come back and say, let's do therapy, let's do this, let's do that. And they're probably nicer than they've ever been. But every time that he would become nice, I would always pray. And then literally he would do something that would make me realize again that it's not my responsibility to change you. You are who you are. I can't change you, and you have not changed. You're just trying to fake it a little while for me to come back.
Yeah. Excuse me. And, you know, I'm glad that you made that point, because a lot of women think that they can change men, and a lot of men think that they can change women. You cannot. No one's going to change unless they want to change. It is nothing we can do to change. And I believe that he realized, like, wow, I believe at some point he knew about his manipulation, and I don't know him, but he realized it, and he probably thought, like, I can tweak myself a little bit to trick her. And I bet it felt like a ton of bricks to know, like, no, I'm serious. As time went by and you didn't respond to any of the things that he was doing, it had to hit him like a ton of bricks.
I think it did. And I think when it hit him hardest was, so when they shut down everything, they closed down our plants in March. And so I went and I was taking care of my grandmother as she made her transition. And it was really interesting because, first off, my grandmother was a very spiritual, strong woman. And what I would say is that as she was going, she told me, she said, "Don't you go back to him. I know that I'm dying, but don't you go back to him." And it was like she knew it was going to happen, because my father, he said, "Ashley, I know that you have your differences, but I want them to come, you know." Because I said, we had an 8-year marriage. Your family's also equally breaking up with them. So I told him, I said, "Out of respect for you, Dad, I will call him." And it's funny because in that moment, he tried to give me a kiss, and I was very upset. But I thought to myself, look at Granny literally prepared me for what this moment was going to look like. Because I will tell you, when you're grieving, so many emotions come out. And my grandmother was not only a rock for me, but our whole family. She gave me strength in moments where I was afraid. I would talk to her even about work, and she would always tell me, "I didn't raise you to be fearful." She told me that all the time. And to lose somebody like that, it was difficult. Mm-hmm. It really was. So yeah, when that happened, I think that's when he realized, oh, she's not coming back.
Hey, Granny don't have time to be playing around with him.
Right.
At all. We have Sharita Hardy on, who says, "Brave enough to leave for self-preservation is not easy. I applaud you, and I am praying for you. Thank you for sharing your testimony. It will help many."
Thank you.
And I agree. You know, and what's interesting to me, your grandmother was different than most grandmothers, because when we think back, my grandmother, your grandmother, they would put up with a lot. And I won't say them as individuals, but that era, they put up with a lot of stuff from men, BS from men. Your grandma was like, no, and that was probably from her experience too. Like, I put up with a lot for various reasons, but you don't have to. You know, look at my granddaughter, this rising star in the union. She's making good money. She's beautiful. You don't have to put up with him. So don't.
Yes.
And that was really, really powerful. Go ahead, Granny.
Yeah.
Granny was not playing around.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing. Did you do anything for your boys? Like, did they ever witness anything? And did you have to put them in like play therapy or any type of therapy to move forward for them? Because I know a lot of people look at kids as resilient. I would say when my parents divorced, it was just like, he not living here no more. Dry those tears up. He's not going to be here. You're going there on the weekends. That's it. You know, whatever. My mother didn't try to break that down, didn't try to explain it. So I always had like this void. And basically, I felt like I was the reason why they divorced, because He was my stepdad, but he raised me from 1 year old. And his mother was upset with mine and told me that he wasn't my real dad. And so I was only 9. And when I told my mother that, it was this turbulence that was worse than a tsunami that happened all in one day. And the next thing I know, he was out of the house. So that silenced me to the degree that even through molestation, I never said another thing. I never told anything else. It took my voice. And I didn't get my voice back until I was an adult. So was there anything around your children? So for those out there who are experiencing this with their kids, how did you shield them? And how, I heard you say, no, I'm not going to let them go around him for a while because he may use them and be manipulative. But did you do anything afterwards? How did you talk to your kids once you took them and yourself out of that situation?
So I would say, so my youngest 2 are going to be 3 and 4. So I will say that they're going to adapt. It just becomes a reality for them. But my 10-year-old, I will say that's kind of like my twin soul kid. And what that means is that I remember conversations my parents had, and it was very much like what you said, right? There was just a statement, no explanation, feelings didn't matter. This is what it is. And so what I did was exactly the opposite of that. So I talked to my son a great deal about what was going to happen in every stage. So when I first left, I just told him, I said, your dad is hurting me and I can't be around him anymore. And I just was honest with him. There was nothing else that I could do. And I kept that dialogue open, but I also told him, I said, I want you to understand that even though we're not together, it could be your love that changes his heart. So I still need you to love him. I still need you to be kind to him. I still need you to be an advocate for your brothers if something was to happen, right? And I feel like having those conversations with him and those honest conversations where we talk about emotions and feelings, and I asked him how he felt about it. And I actually did have him talk to a therapist. It was only a couple times, honestly, because the therapist felt like he seemed to be coping just fine. But I remember the therapist asking him, well, how do you feel about it? This is a lot going on. And he said, I feel fine about it because I understand why it happened. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that parents have when you're living in dysfunction is that your children don't see it. And they see it. They see it, they know it, and they feel you. And that spirit of hurt and pain that you're walking around with, they feel it more than you recognize it and see it. And so for me, that was also affirming, because I think that it was important for him to see that. It was important for him to see that you need to walk away. Because I will also say that, you know, my parents, they were married up until my father passed away, but there was a lot of normalization of dysfunction. And it wasn't like physical dysfunction. It was just like a lot of arguments all the time. And so that became normal in my eyes, even though honestly, it was something that didn't it didn't resonate with me. I will tell you that right now, I don't want peace. That's all I want is peace. But I think that having real conversations with your children, I even prepared my son for the fact that I knew that my ex-husband would have women around. And I told him, I said, you know, because my ex-husband had a son before me. And so I told him, I said, you know, you remember how we struggled a little bit with little Dre and how we used to have bad interactions at times, because I think children struggle with the loyalty piece, right? You're not my mom, and I don't know if I should be loyal to you. And so I never took that personal, but I told him, I said, whoever comes around, as long as they're not mean to you, don't be mean to them. Be kind. And I think talking them through what you know is bound to happen is important, instead of leaving them in a sea of emotions that never end, because they'll just constantly think about it and they won't understand why certain things are happening. Just like you said, you thought that it was your fault, right? And it had nothing to do with you. Nothing. But as a child, you begin to internalize those things and you believe that it does. And so for me, it was very important to have really good, constructive conversations with my son where we talked about emotional things, because one of the other things about me is that I'm adopted. So my parents adopted five 5 kids. Really, they had 6. Before adoption was like normalized, they had another one, but he's like 18 years older than us. But because when you're adopted, I think that you're always seeking family. And so I can sit here and have this conversation openly, because honestly, I think that it takes a great deal of strength to talk about your true vulnerabilities, and you have to recognize what they are in order to move forward. But being adopted, I really wanted a family. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be accepted and loved, and just to have like that Cosby feel, or even the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because that was like a variation of just different socioeconomic statuses for a family, right? Because you had Wills from the inner city, and then they were from the more affluent community, and just to have that love, though, that's what I wanted. It didn't matter about the blend, but the love is really what I wanted. And so what I will say is that we don't have to perpetuate the things of the past. We're no longer surviving. I applaud actors, and I will talk about Black joy. I'm not doing Black pain anymore, right? I mean, there's such a great deal of joy amongst Black people. There's a great deal of joy amongst even families that don't appear to be perfect, right? So I think that we need to take the time to talk to our children and to help them work through their emotions, and not just tell them to sit in them.
Absolutely. Wow. I'm so astonished by that, and having that dialogue with your son. And he understood. And I don't think we give children enough credit for what they have the ability to decipher, right? Even with toys, it might say this is for 3 years and older. Well, hey, if it's no choking hazard, I'm going to give it to them. Mm-hmm. They'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. You know, the tablets, they can work them better than we can, right? Mm-hmm. But you look at the age and circumstances, and even also things that happened when we were young, mm-hmm. right? I'm like, no, I don't want my child to go through that. They are going through it. They feel your energy. They see what's going on. They may hear some of the closed door conversations. And even if nothing is spoken, the body language between two people who they once saw in such a loving manner now have this distance or this tension. They know. So for our viewers and listeners out there, please try to find a way to talk to your children about what's going on, so they won't be like myself. And I'm not bashing my mother, but I will have to say what is true. I was an adult, basically a broken child, walking around masquerading as an adult, because I had to get over so many things that happened in my childhood. And I believe that a parent's job is to raise a child to become an adult that does not have to heal from their childhood.
Yes.
So I applaud you for that effort of having that conversation with your son, and not, well, what go on in this house, stay in this house kind of thing. You know, like, no, this is what's going on in this house. And I'm not saying blurt it out to anyone outside of the house, but I am saying we're going to talk about what's going on inside of this house, and we're going to process what's going on inside of this house. That's way different than what's going on in this house stays in this house. Fine, you know, if that's what you're saying, but still process with the children what is going on in the house so that they understand. Mm-hmm. You have been listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, and we're talking about turning pain into power with Ashley Lewis and her journey from the pain of domestic violence to the power, and how she tapped into her faith. And when we come back, we're going to go on that faith journey with us. So we'll be right back after the break.
with many parts. Some are players, some are sharks. Broken minds, broken hearts. Admitting that is where it starts. Recognizing who they are and don't let it go too far. Get that demon out your car and don't look back or there'll be scars.
No matter how far down you fall, there's a great purpose to it all. It's all a part of God's plan to get you to a place where you can stand. Every time I think about the pain and all the life lessons that I gained, change my thoughts and now I'm free, free to walk into my destiny. My spirit's now free and I'm giving thanks, thankful I can finally breathe again. I feel like going on, 'cause I let it go. Gotta let it go. Gotta let it go. Gotta let it go. The pain brings the guilt, the shame, it's all a part of the enemy's game to distract you from God's plan for you.
Yeah, see what we want ain't always best. Trusting God and worry less. Crossing fingers, holding breaths. A waste of time at best. Good character comes with tests. And when your life's a mess, just don't hold on to pain and stress. Just let it go and you'll be blessed.
There will always be rain. Trials of life will come. There will always be sun through God Almighty. The difference is how we respond. No matter what happens to you, gotta keep moving on. Hey, gotta let it go. Gotta let it go. Gotta let it go. The pain, regret, the guilt, the shame, it's all a part of the enemy's game to distract you.
And you are listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, 88.1 FM in Detroit Highland Park area. RadioWeCanSee.com for those of you who are tuning in that way, and those of you on the Facebook Live. We are so grateful and thankful to have Ashley Lewis share her story, her journey from pain to power. Before the break, we talked about the domestic violence situation that she was in her marriage. But now we're moving and we're going to shift this from pain to power. And Ashley, you talked a lot about God and you talked a lot about faith. What role did that play in sustaining yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically throughout this transition?
So I will say that it was essential. What I will say is that thank God for the union, because I make good money. Good. We have good wages, and women make equal to men. And so I was able to stabilize myself. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I had some debt, so I'm not ashamed to say it. But I had to go into debt to start over in life. But the ability to be able to do so, to still have good credit, to still be able to function was a blessing. And so the union aspect of it was very, very good. I was good on the financial front, let me say it that way. And I was blessed to be there. But spiritually, it was very difficult because in addition to my divorce, my grandmother had passed. And then 3 weeks later, I lost my dad. And so then I would say about a month later, I got the consent to divorce from my ex-husband. And as if he hadn't robbed me enough of like my spirit, my mind, my soul, he wanted to take just about everything that I had earned, everything. Part of my pension, the bonuses that I had got that everybody sees in the newspapers, everything. And I just remember feeling so depressed and shattered. And in those moments, I tell people all the time, I was suicidal. There's no shame in it. I was really just down. I didn't know where to go, what to do. I laid on my floor and I didn't know what to do. But I will tell you that God sends people. And so,
yes, he does.
So I was blessed with, I call her my surrogate mom, basically, but it's Mama Connie. She's actually Reverend Dr. Constance Simon. She hates that I say all of that. But she literally grabbed my hand. And what I will say is that certain people will make sure that you're good financially, but your spiritual piece, especially after grave losses, is very important. And you can't function with either or. Let me say it that way. She grabbed me because she knew what I was going through. She's known me since Sunday school when I was probably 10 years old. And she literally nurtured my soul. And what I will say is that that's kind of what drove Faith and Labor, because our discussions made me realize how they coincide, right? Because in the union, we deal with people who have all kinds of issues, right? And we're trying to help them through those issues. Everybody struggles with something. Everybody goes through something. Everybody has some level of pain. But her talking about even the things that she's done to help people along, and just literally, I can't explain how she did it. I just feel blessed in the fact that I had somebody who told me that I was worthy, who told me that, you deserve to live, that told me that God sees you, God loves you. I needed that. I think that people too often put too much, and I have done it myself, you put too much clout in people, and people are fickle. People will change, and it's no doing of their own. It doesn't make them bad people. But when you get a foundation in God and see how God sees you, that gives you, and has given me, honestly, a level of resilience that people can't understand. Like, I can sit here and smile. My life, I have gone through a lot in my life, but I will tell you, I will still love like I've never been hurt. I will still give to anybody that comes my way. I would say that my love is unconditional, but it is conditional if you hurt me, because I've learned those boundaries, because I think that can be a problem sometimes too if we don't create boundaries. But what I will say is that I needed God, because there was nothing I could say to myself to make me get going. It was only through those conversations with Mama Connie, who's a minister, who told me that God sees you, right? That even in your dysfunction, you can be redeemed. Even in the things that you felt like you've done wrong, you can be redeemed. And so to me, my faith was essential in my healing. Because had I not had that faith, I will tell you that I wouldn't be sitting here now smiling, joyous. It wouldn't have happened. Because you have to, I think that what people don't understand is, I grew up in church. I literally went to church all the time. So people say to you, they say, oh, I went to church, I know God. No. Until you're down there and you're having a conversation with God, like having a conversation, a real one. Because I will tell you, I wasn't praying for things that really were aching and hurting my soul. I was praying for superficial things, and not necessarily clothes and money, but more like, oh, just pray for the family. We're going to pray for this person. No, but I need to pray because God, I'm hurting. My self-esteem is low, God. I don't value myself. Can you help me with this? Like those kind of conversations. I needed to go through that to become healed. And I think that for me, what I will say is that I was blessed enough to be able to be off. I was off on sick leave for probably 3 months. And I spent every bit of those 3 months praying. And I was literally with her all the time because I needed to work on my soul. When you explore God, you explore yourself. You explore your identity. You explore who you are. You explore your hurt, your pain, all the things that keep you up at night. And I think that people have to understand it's not church. Like everybody's like, oh, you're one of those. No, I'm not one of those. I just know God. And God isn't bound to that building, but God is the person that I talk to in every moment of my life.
Yeah, you better say it. And a couple of things I heard you say early on in the first segment, that you always prayed you wanted a family. And see, God will deliver our prayers in his way. He gave you a family.
He did.
He gave you Mama Connie.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
You had it painted in one way, but he answered your prayer in his way. And when I heard you say just now that you pray for a lot of other people and other things, but not really for yourself. And I went through that as well. Now my prayer is simple. Lord, protect me, direct me, and correct me.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Anything else I say, and I call it mindfulness every night. And I have my niece's 8-year-old living with me now under COVID. And I teach him mindfulness, and every night we do our meditation and we pray and we talk to God or whatever. It's pretty simplistic because he knows the desires of your heart.
Yes.
Right? And so he's giving you the desires of your heart. And still, I think more will manifest of this situation, that test that you have passed will come. This is just the beginning of it. And I don't hear one crack in your voice, not one tear about to drop through your eye. And literally, listeners and viewers, she's sitting in here smiling. You wouldn't think that we are talking about all of the disdain that she's been through, all of the trauma that she has been through, or none of that. She is sitting here looking gorgeous as ever, but don't get in her inbox because I read on Facebook that she's taking time for herself. And she is proud to do that.
Yeah.
And so don't go to jumping in her inbox, fellas. That will be a no thank you. But trauma happened to Ashley. It happened to you, but it did not define you. It did not. And you stopped, dropped, and shopped within the depths of your soul when you were on that floor in that prayer room that I have seen you display. Probably face almost in the carpet, praying. But during that time, in that embryonic type position, you still got up again. That's what that rebirth is to me. You know, when people say, oh, I'm a born again, and all of that. Okay, that's fine. But my definition is this. When I got baptized, I went in a dry center. I came out a wet one. Then the damn thing changed for a long time. Right? Until recently, until my husband was dying, and you knew him. You're friends with my granddaughter.
Yes.
And that's when I was born again. Faith kicked in, that mustard seed, because I will tell you, if I could have took out a loan to save his life, if I could have swiped a credit card to save his life, if I could have liquidated a 401k to save his life, I would have done that. But mustard seed faith is relying on what God is going to do. And in that moment, taking care of my grandmother until she died, and then my husband directly after until he died, that mustard seed faith was just simple. Lord, let your will be done and ensure that I can handle it. That was all I could say. And I smiled like you did, walking those hospital floors, sleeping in that hospital window, going home alone and had no one else, because you know how my husband was, and he was private. When he said don't call no damn body, that's what he means. So it's like, all right, and I felt it was selfish sometime, right? Like, don't call nobody. I'm supposed to go through this by myself. But that's when God made it clear, you're not going through it by yourself. I'm here. I'm here. You're fine. Now just keep walking. And that's the same thing I believe you discovered.
Yes.
You were never alone.
Yes.
But since you wanted family, my daughter, and you prayed to me and you asked me for this, I'm giving you one. Your union family. I heard you refer to them as your union family. And sometimes people who are not blood relatives are more a family to us than other people, because we can open up and we don't fear judgment or shame or criticism or anything like that. We can just, they have to accept us who we are to even be considered as family, right? Where relatives, you don't have a choice who your relatives are. but you do have a choice who your family is.
Yes, and it's funny. I do have to give one plug because I actually have who I call a surrogate dad, and I'm grateful for men who also will tell you that you deserve to be happy, you know. And his name is Michael Kohler. He would kill me for this, but he really walked me through every step. And when I was thinking about leaving, he would tell me all the time, constantly, just reiterating it: you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be happy. And he pragmatically walked me through it. You know, I think that, you know, God sends certain people, and I was grateful for him because he reminded me, okay, you need to get this. You need to have birth certificates, social security cards. You need to change your beneficiaries, do all of these pragmatic things that you don't really see emotionally, right? Because you're over here. But I was really grateful for him because he really helped walk me through, him and his wife. I mean, the moments when the daycare was closed, I drove all the way down from Flint to Warren to drop them off and back and forth sometimes. And and just at the drop of a dime, and they would do it. And so what I will also say too is that, just because I know we're coming to the end, that what I will also say is that men go through the same thing with women.
Yes.
So, some of these women are hurting and they bleeding, and y'all think y'all got to love this half full person. God does not love us half full. He loves us unconditionally. I mean, talking about full body, full cup, overflowing kind of love.
Absolutely.
And yet we still try to love these half full people, and it's not your responsibility to fix people. But I think that one of the things that I've also equally noticed is that men, because you're trying to be a man, you think it's okay to take these things off of a woman. And I will also say you have to heal, because I will say this too. I decided not to date because I knew I was a terror on wheels. It wasn't a man in the world that could tell me he was good. But I needed to heal. I needed to be able to pray for my ex-husband instead of when I saw him wanting to literally strangle him for all the pain that he put me through. And so you have to relinquish that. And you have to be, I remember Mama Connie telling me, you have to let it go so that you can pray for him. And that was earth shattering to me, because I'm like, what you want me to do? I'm like, huh? No. But oh my God, just letting all of that go. I'm smiling. I'm sitting here laughing about the whole thing because honestly, all of it was a lesson. And I am such a better woman, a greater person, a greater believer now.
And I believe that laughter that you're exhibiting is not because you think anything is funny or a joke. That's that joy.
Yes.
You have received joy, so you can express yourself that way. Let's talk a few minutes before we leave about faith in labor. Where did that idea come from? Because this is in conjunction with the AFL-CIO, correct?
Yes, it is.
So tell our viewers and listeners about that. And if they aren't a part of a labor movement, how can they get involved?
So let me start off by saying that actually, the labor movement is, as far as we know it, the greatest movement in terms of organizing labor, and that came under FDR and the New Deal. But that was really organized out of the fact that there was a recognition of the fact that people who were working, their worth wasn't being seen. And so there became an intersection of clergy. We had MLK. MLK was working with Walter Reuther, with A. Philip Randolph. He was walking with labor leaders, because quite frankly, you cannot create parity without economics. And too often our worth is dismantled. Mm-hmm. And so reflecting on, honestly, a lot of the conversations that me and Mama Connie had, and she actually works for Ecumenical Theological Seminary. She's a director of over the doctorate program. I can't think of the title, forgive me, but she's over the doctorate program. And just her helping me explore myself, and just the intersection of how faith and labor have always worked together to help bring people up. And so for me, you can't tell me nothing about labor. Like, I love labor to death, because quite frankly, for anybody to be able to walk out of high school and to be able to obtain a living wage is essential. Mm-hmm. And you have
I agree with that.
yes.
100%.
And you have to see worth in yourself, though. And that's where I feel like faith comes in, because too often people devalue themselves. Instead of saying the person making $15 an hour, they want 15 at McDonald's, but they can't make my burger right. Well, how about they don't have enough staff there? How about the people working there probably are working 2 to 3 jobs? Like, let's look at the actual person. And that's where faith comes in, because that allows you to see the humanity in the person, to see that they're just human beings who just want to, they don't want to sit at home. They're working, but they want to be able to live and work. And so what I thought would be a good idea was to intersect the two of them, because I think that too often we become split on, okay, I want this person to get credit, that person to get credit. And instead of just saying, okay, we need to get back to the ground. Even church, right? What did this pandemic do? It pushed them back to the ground. Now in the city of Detroit, who's administering the vaccines? Churches. Mm-hmm. Who's been giving out food? Churches. And so we're getting back to the real nuts and the bolts, which is how do you help these communities? And this is what we've always done in labor, but I believe through faith, we will definitely magnify that connection. And so it was that conversation, those conversations that we kept having as I'm healing, right? I'm healing and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate these waters. And we're having really good discussions about how to uplift our communities, because I don't look at myself and say, oh, I made it and I'm good. No. I want to help. I want to share my story, and I share it today because I wanted to help somebody. I'm going to share my story because I want people to understand that you are worth more. You're worth more, whether it be in your household or outside of your household. And you deserve to have a living wage. And I will tell anybody, if you desire to join the union, right now is a great time. We have a pro-union president who is making it easier for people to join. But also you have to recognize your worth, because it's not an easy battle. Corporations are literally fighting tooth and nail to not pay us a penny more. Because what I will say is, even with the Fight for 15, one of the young ladies said, they started the organizing drive and they increased their wages by, a nickel? A nickel. What was that going to do?
So how can people, is there a website? Is there some way that people can get more information and go to sign up or get in touch with those who can help the organization?
Yes. So if you go to the Michigan AFL-CIO's Facebook page, you'll be able to see our conversations. We also have a Facebook group. It's a Faith and Labor Facebook group, so that you can actually ask to join there. We do have website links, but I would say that I don't know if I should give that. I can probably, maybe when we post this video, I'll have the link in there so they can actually register. We have monthly conversations. The next conversation that we're actually going to have the Lieutenant Governor, Garland Gilchrist. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple other men that are going to be talking. They're going to be talking about restoration. Especially because there's a lot of people who might have landed in prison for whatever the reason. But instead, as a community judging them, we need to turn them into viable citizens. So how do we redeem them? How do we redeem people back into the workforce so that they can have dignity and respect in their families? Because I know for anybody, and I don't care whether you're male or female, if you can't provide for your family, it's dehumanizing. And so we're going to have a conversation where we discuss how we can actually participate and make those things better for our communities as a whole. Because incarceration doesn't just affect Detroit, it affects every community out there.
Absolutely. It's just magnified in Detroit and Inkster and places like that because they're predominantly Black.
Yes.
But it happens everywhere. Well, as always, we have run out of time. Ashley, thank you. Thank you for this very heartfelt, empowering conversation and opening the window to your soul and allowing us to look in. Are there any parting words that you would like to share?
Yes, let me say thank you first and foremost, because what I will tell people is that shame will leave you shackled. And so understand that it takes more courage to be vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage for me to sit here and tell people my whole life story. But I will say that it equally gives me a different level of energy. It gives me a different level of confidence because I don't have to hide anything. Mm-hmm. And what I will say to any woman and any man out there as well, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved in a full way and not a hurtful way. And you owe it to your children and to those coming behind you to exhibit a love that the next generation can thrive in.
Agreed. Thank you so much. I love you dearly, and I am so happy that we've reconnected at this juncture. You have been listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream. And I don't spill tea or try to make you feel dazed like you had a shot of cheap liquor. I just articulate strong and powerful statements that make you see the world from a different point of view. Mine. We will see you next week, and you guys have a wonderful week. So long.